video, I'm going to teach you how to apply hand-drawn techniques to finesse a hybrid rendering, how to apply digital techniques to finesse a hybrid rendering, and then to save and export your final JPEG image. So I've got two images open here in Photoshop. And the first one, the one that you're looking at right now, is where we left our image last. And you can see here that we have a hand-drawn element brought in on top of this digital rendering, but it's not really finessed, meaning these two parts look very distinct. It's easy to tell that there's, a hand-drawn element on top of a digital one. And this can be kind of distracting because it feels like, as we say, kind of a bad ransom note. So what I did was I printed this out, this image out. It's a JPEG. I printed it out on 8.5 by 11 cardstock that was bright white, so that it could really give me good rendition of the coloring, and also so that it would take a little bit extra ink if I needed to overlay some texture and highlights and things onto it. So what you're looking at right now is what happened after. So I printed it out, and then I touched every single part of this rendering, both with my white colored pencil and with my black Sharpie pen. So you can see every single part of it has texture and highlights added to it. So you can see I added some white scumbling along this wall, white highlights over here, white highlights on the front of these drapes, some white scumbling and highlights at the edges of this drop ceiling. There's some white added to the scale figure here, white along the edges of these chairs here, white highlights added to the legs here because they were kind of getting lost against that dark floor. I added some white along the front of this carpet. Again, white on the edge here, white on the front of the scale figure, white highlights here coming up from the sconce, and then I added some white to start to articulate the form of the sconce itself. I added some white here to indicate the light coming down from the pendant light as well. And then you can see I added a dark pen. I like to use my black fine tip Sharpie, but any pen will work, to come in and add some scumbling texture here and here to the front of the drop ceiling. I also added a thicker line weight edge and just kind of faded it out to really make those edges pop out. You can see here some of my dining pod here was faded out during the first Photoshop treatment. And so I came in and added again the dark stippling and line weight variation along the edges here, just to make it pop out again from its background. Again, I added more of that along the scale figure. I added some textural lines, some contour lines along the edge of this dining pod to convey that curve. And then again, still some stippling happening up here. You can see I added some cross hatching on all of the chairs. Notice that I added the vertical part of the cross hatching is a little bit of a soft curve to mimic the curve on the chair edge, and then the horizontal part of the cross hatching here goes to the vanishing point over there and to the vanishing point over here. I added some very soft, gentle, and sketchy but controlled lines to articulate the planes of that table, and then with some stippling again along the vase that holds the orchids at the top. More cross-hatching texture, again indicating a curve and going to the vanishing point on that pendant light. Really soft articulation of the edges of the artwork on the back wall. Again, same thing, kind of emphasizing the edges of the vases here to kind of pop them out from the background. And then you can see here I added again some contour lines and thicker edges along the dining pod. And then I came in here along the side to kind of give a little bit more articulation to that treatment on the wall. So you can see I touched every part of this rendering with my highlight and my marker to get that hand-drawn technique applied everywhere, so that the whole image started to look a little bit more finessed. Now, the digital techniques that I'm going to use now, there's a couple. The first one is I want to show you how to adjust the color, and I want to show you how to apply a filter as well. So if I go to the image here, I can go to adjustments and I can mess with or change the color a little bit here. So if I go to brightness contrast, I can adjust how bright this image looks. See, it got a little dark during all the printing out. So I can lighten this up, make it look like daylight a little bit. The contrast, you can play with this depending on your image. If you want to kind of really bring out the brighter tones, you can adjust the contrast. But again, make sure that you don't make so many changes that it ceases to look realistic or that it looks washed out. The other thing that you can do is you can go to auto color and it will adjust the color a little bit. You could see I did undo because I want to do it manually. I can go to some hue and saturation here. You can see I can adjust some of these. I can start to increase the redness of my image a little bit more. I can bring down some of the green tones a little bit. You can see I can adjust the highlight and brightness just a little bit. So I'm not doing too much. I'm just kind of pumping up just a little bit of those real bright tones so that it doesn't get too washed out. Now, keep in mind here, the image itself, just slight color adjusting. There's so many more things we could do to this, but for right now, we're going to leave it as is, and then I'm going to go up to the filter gallery. Now, I'm going to apply a filter over this image with the kind of caveat that you have to be really careful at applying filters to make sure that it doesn't compromise the clarity. Right now, we only have one layer here and it's the background layer. So the filter is only going to apply to this layer. But if we had lots of layers, we would have to apply the same filter to all the layers or merge all of the layers in order for it to apply to all of them at the same time. So right now I'm going to go up to filter and I'm going to go to filter gallery. Now, keep in mind that the filter gallery is, designers know about this. So you have to be real careful not to kind of overuse these and get an image that's kind of overly artistic that doesn't really represent your space too much. It's like we don't want to over process our handwork too much. But I want you to play with a couple of these just to see how it looks. You can bring in all different qualities to your image. Some of them will affect the clarity. Some of them will make it look unique. But again, you just have to be really careful because you don't want to have something look so artsy that you can't really tell the design intent. One that works really well generally is this one that's called poster edges here. And it just kind of finesses a little bit more of that boundary between the digital and the handwork a little bit more so that you can start to have difficulty telling what's drawn by hand and what's drawn with the computer. So once you've applied that filter, you can just hit OK. Again, that's poster edges, but there's a lot more. I'm going to hit the OK button. And now this image, I'm going to save it. And so I'm going to go up here and hit the Save As button. Now, right now, it's just got one layer. So saving it as a JPEG will look exactly the same as the layer or as the image that you have here. But if you had multiple layers, the document here would be a PSD or Photoshop file. So I'm going to pause for a second and save it. Now you can see I've called this the hybrid rendering after highlights, after highlights and shadows and then with filters applied. So I'm saving it during each step of the process. And there's several drop-down options you can have, but we're going to make sure we hit JPEG and save. And we're going to make sure that we save it as a large file so it's really high resolution so it'll look good, nice and big in our portfolio. And then we are going to hit OK. And so now you know how to take an image from the kind of the two parts where you've got the digital and the hand-drawn and they don't look very good together. And you can now apply both a combination of hand techniques, so applying highlights and shadows and textures with your pen, and then bringing it into Photoshop to add additional finessing effects such as filters and adjusting the color levels, so that you end up with a rendering that still has so many other things that we could add to make it look unique, but for right now is a beautiful representation of a hybrid rendering skill set.